Hello, and thanks for joining again, the Well Off Podcast. I'm your host, George Masri, and today I interview Jules Mckenzie, who is in Orillia, Ontario. He is a police officer, actually, and we had a really interesting conversation because he was one of the first members of REIN, the Real Estate Investment Network, now known as the Real Estate Intelligence Network, I believe. And we kind of talked about, because he's been doing this for so long, we talked about what he would do differently if he were to restart. I also asked him about some of his colleagues, the people that he's seen for a long time at REIN. What have they done that has led to their success? And we talk about the fundamentals of real estate investing. We covered a lot in this one, and I think for somebody who's looking to get advice from a fellow investor that's been doing this for a long time, this is a great episode for you. So have a listen. Let me know what your thoughts are. Share this with your friends and family. Make sure to leave us a review, comment, do what you got to do to make sure that we spread the message around. And again, go to welloff.ca/report if you want some free real estate content. Lots of good stuff down in there for you to download. Enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Well Off Podcast, where the goal is to motivate, inspire, and share success principles. I'm here with Jules Mckenzie today. Jules has been investing in real estate for over 18 years, and he uses a simple buy and hold strategy. Him and his wife have acquired over 50 properties by developing relationships with people who became their investors. And recently they sold and refinanced other properties to pay out some of the investors that they worked with, and they're holding on to 14 income-producing properties. So, Jules, I saw also that you're a police officer with the Rama Police Service, Casino
Yes,
Rama. That's cool. That's interesting.
Casino Rama First Nation.
Awesome. Well, first of all, welcome to the show. I mean to say. So Jules, the way I like to start off is by asking you a little bit about your childhood. If you want to just tell us a few things that you remember from then, and we'll start that way.
Okay, my childhood. So we're going to take a deep dive then.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me on the show, George. I really appreciate it. You have a very interesting and insightful podcast. I'm originally from Kipawa, Quebec, which is about 50 miles east of North Bay. My father was the chief of our little Indigenous reservation, and my mom was the band manager. They only got CMHC money for 30 houses, and they had to house about 300 people, so that math didn't work out so good. So I bore the brunt of a lot of tough decisions my parents had to make, so I was picked on quite a bit as a child by my fellow Indigenous people in Kipawa. And then if that wasn't enough, we went to Temiskaming, Quebec public school, where there was some anti-English sentiment. I only spoke English, and I still really only speak English. There was a separatist movement on the run, on the go at the time when I was growing up back then. So, times were a little tough emotionally and personally. However, it was a beautiful place to grow up on Lake Kipawa. Lots of motorsports, four-wheeling, and tiller boats and snowmobiles. So yeah, that's a little bit about my childhood. How's that?
That's awesome. So I guess so you said your family's originally from a reserve. Is that right?
That's right. Yes.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm just starting to find out a little bit more about that culture because my wife's best friend is Native. So I've been identifying and discovering a lot of things that I didn't know about. Like growing up, I didn't really know anyone who was Native. So it's cool to find out a little bit more about that whole side of Canadian culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, cool. Well, that might be a little bit offensive to say Canadian culture, but you know what I mean.
I do know what you mean. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah. So just out of curiosity, can you tell me a little bit about your policing there with Casino Rama and Rama First Nation?
Certainly. So I have a combined police service of about 31 years under my belt. 11 years with the Ontario Provincial Police all over Ontario. I started in Armstrong, north of Thunder Bay in 1989. I transferred to Ottawa Canada Detachment for a couple years. Then I transferred up to Kirkland Lake Detachment after my dad took sick. That was the closest I could get to him at the time. And then after he passed and things kind of settled down with the estate, I guess, for lack of a better term, I had an opportunity to come to what they call back then the Mckenzie First Nation. It's now called Rama First Nation, and they were looking for some OPP guys to coach the new Mckenzie police officers. So I coached 4 guys in under 2 years, and after having a near nervous breakdown because it's a lot of work and a lot of responsibility, they offered me a full-time job with them. And at the time I said, well, I have a safe, secure government job. What could you possibly offer me? So they offered me wage parity with the OPP in any given calendar year and 100% pension and benefits. So I took them up on it and patched over in March of 2000 and I think it was 2001. I left the OPP for Rama Police full-time. And I've been there ever since. I had a small portion of my pension, which was non-transferable. So it was either, buy a car or go on a vacation or what are we going to do? And I got interested in investing in real estate after a few other failed attempts on some other things. And that's been a path that has proved to be very good for our finances.
Mm-hmm. What is it that drew you into real estate investing?
So I started out, I came home one day, I was still OPP then, living in Orillia, and there was a guy, very well-dressed guy, drawing circles on a whiteboard in my living room with some other well-dressed people sitting in my living room watching him draw circles on a whiteboard. And that was my introduction to the Amway business, or the Quick Start business. And although we didn't make any real money in that business, I learned how to cold contact people, do sales pitches, and I actually read the books, attended the seminars, and listened to the cassette tapes. There was cassette tapes way back in the day, so that's how old I am.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so yeah, so that kind of introduced you to the idea, or kind of sparked your interest in the idea of investing in real estate. What did you do at that point?
So it was shortly after I read the book Cash Flow Quadrant, where he talks about the 4 quadrants: the employee, self-employed, business owner, and investor. And there was a chapter in there talking about how you can keep your daytime full-time job and invest in your spare time. And that resonated with me. We saw a TV infomercial on television for an American-based training company that was coming up to Mississauga to put on some real estate courses. And I said, I could do that. That's something that I can make work. And I went to the free evening seminar and signed up for the all weekend.
Yeah, it happens to, they got you on, they hooked you on that.
They sure did. Hook, line, and sinker.
Okay. All right, cool. So you invest mostly in Orillia, from my understanding?
Yeah, that's correct. So we started investing in 2001. Actually, my first property was in Angus, Ontario, which is just outside of Barrie on Highway 90. And it was a rundown 4-plex. The second purchase was another property in a duplex in Orillia. And the crux of the American course that I took was to buy rundown real estate and just do little fixes to rehabilitate it. But I kind of went beyond that and got myself into some financial trouble and didn't have enough money to finish the renovations and, re-rent vacancies that we were carrying at the time. The courses were very expensive. And there was one part in the American course where they said that they showed us how to approach our creditors and inflate our balances on our credit cards and lines of credit. And again, they got me again. So I did that. And then they sold us courses. And, I'm sure your listeners can feel my pain.
Mm-hmm. So you were borrowing a bunch of money to do these renos, and you had vacancies and you had this and that, and it just kind of became a little bit too much at that time. Yeah,
it did. It was starting to implode in on itself. I couldn't borrow any more money. And there was one week I was getting mentored by the Canadian cash flow guy, Darren Weeks. And he invited me to one more seminar because I told him, I had expressed to him, I said, I'm done with this. I'm going to let these properties go at a loss. and I'm just gonna, move on to something else. And he invited me to this one more seminar, and he says it's Don R. Campbell's coming to Toronto to open up an Ontario REIN chapter, and I didn't know what that was at the time, but anyhow, I went to the seminar, and I remember my wife was pretty cold with me. She didn't want me to go to the seminar. She didn't want me to sign anything, buy anything, do anything without checking with her first. And during the seminar, I was again in Mississauga, and Don was the keynote for a guy named Raymond Arendt. And Don started talking about the top 10 towns in Ontario to invest in. So, we started talking about the Junction in Toronto. I had a little chuckle about that. He talked about Hamilton and Burlington, and then he talked about Whitby, Oshawa, and Pickering. He even talked about Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge. And then he said, if you want the absolute best place with the best economic fundamentals right now to invest in, it's the Orillia and Barrie corridor. And I just lost my shit. I just jumped up and down. I was whooping and hollering in the back of the room. And I remember Don looking back saying, and if you want to know something about those areas, I think you can ask that maniac jumping up and down in the back. He probably knows a couple of things about those places. And he was right.
Yeah. That's cool. So that kind of gave you the motivation to continue. Is that sort of what happened?
It gave me hope. I still had to go through some financial pain, if you will. But at least I knew that I was on the right track, being in the right geographical area to continue investing. So we did let those properties go, and we did have to do some restructuring and endure some financial pain to get back on our feet. But once I started investing based on a very specific set of fundamentals, Canadian specific fundamentals, that's when things really turned around for me. I heard in one of the audios from a guy named Tim Johnson how you can, once you run out of money to invest, you have experience to bring to the marketplace. So I brought my knowledge and expertise up until this point, and I brought my deals, and I would sit kneecap to kneecap with fellow investors in REIN and pitch my deals. And I used this very sophisticated thing, this folder of my before and after pictures to pitch my deal to my fellow investors and say, This is my before and after. And this is largely when I was doing a lot of the work myself, my handiwork. And that's how I started attracting investors. So my investors would put up the money for down payment, closing costs, a little reserve, and then I would put up the deal. I'd go on mortgage and title, and then I would manage everything. I would collect the rents, deal with delinquencies, deal with maintenance issues, deal with general contractors who were there to fix maintenance issues. And my wife was doing record keeping and bookkeeping, and we would report back to our investors. After a holding period of 5 to 7 years, then we would either sell or refinance the property, and I would pay back my investors all their initial capital first, and then we'd split the remaining equity 50-50, and that's when we got paid.
Cool. I just want to touch on something you said. You mentioned that you eventually started investing with certain fundamentals in mind, and that changed your business. What were those fundamentals?
So the first set of fundamentals, it's things like population growth, transportation improvements, a booming economic environment in which the politicians don't interfere but actually encourage growth. And then it could be things like interprovincial migration into a certain area, which was our area, and interest rates being low at the time, and they're even lower now, is another fundamental. And then certain tactics like like now they call it the Burr technique, where you buy, rent out, and refinance it. So I was doing that. It wasn't called that then. A few of our fellow investors were doing that strategy as well before it was called that. And those are the kind of fundamentals that I learned, instead of just straight going to the seller of a property and just kicking them and beating them down until they give you the absolute lowest, deepest discounted price they can.
Sure. Okay, so these are more fundamentals in terms of the assets, qualifying the assets that you were buying. It's not so much the fundamentals in terms of your own personal spending or, like how you're funding these deals.
Yes and no. Keep in mind that some of these fundamentals also apply to neighborhoods. Like you want to invest in a growing neighborhood as opposed to a neighborhood that things are closing down and wrapping up.
Sure.
I'm not sure. I kind of lost my train of thought there.
No worries. That's fine. Okay. So you, just to kind of recap, you were REIN, being a member there. It helped give you the confidence to continue. It gave you hope, and you were able to start raising money to buy more rental properties. And I think at this stage, right now you're at 14 properties. Is that right?
I was at 14 properties. At one point in our career, we did a big deal in 2005, and that was for 38 townhouses in Orillia. So I raised a little over $1.5 million for the down payment closing costs on that deal. And we closed on all 38. And since that time, I've been selling those off. In 2015, we did a big refinance. We were down to 22 in that particular pool of properties. And I went down to 11. When I refinanced 11, a subsequent investor took over the other 11 and paid me out on those. We paid out subsequent investors, and then we held on to those for the last 5 years. But as of late, we've been selling those. We do have some small multifamily properties as well. One of my investors, she's an excellent artist in Toronto, and she invests very strategically and very by the book as far as looking at the numbers and the cash flow. And so we've invested with six small multifamily properties with her. And there's another investor that's still around. He's an executive with Hewlett Packard out of the US. And we still have one property with him. So we have about 14, 15 properties. And it's looking pretty good. As of late, we moved into our renovation project here. So this is the former Kavanaugh Spa. It was a spa house, and it's an 1800s Victorian home that is zoned for a bed and breakfast. So right now we're renovating this property into its former glory as a beautiful bed and breakfast property. We're going to have our living quarters in the back half of the property. We're building a little addition onto it. And it'll be the ultimate house hack. And it'll be a good segue into my retirement from policing, which is coming up in about 3 years.
Awesome. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
So just to kind of recap what you're saying, you started off, you were growing, you bought all these properties, you bought the 38 townhouses in 2005, and then you started selling them off slowly. And at this point, are you trying to pay down all of your mortgages to have the rental income subsidize your work income?
Not necessarily. No, I still had a lot of debt of my own to pay out during that period of time. And once we got that under control, then we started investing in again. And so it's a combination of refinancing some things and selling some things. And that strategy you're mentioning is something that I've recently got interested in doing. And in that, the more I can sell, the more I can pay down debt on existing properties to start deriving some passive, not necessarily passive income off the income property, but drawing more income off the property that would have otherwise gone to debt service.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so your plan kind of moving forward, just pay it down and then, yeah. Okay, that's great. So have you always worked on the same type of properties? It sounds like you started off with a fourplex, then a duplex, and then moving forward, you bought the townhouses? So there's all sorts of different things. Do you focus on anything specific today, or are you still kind of open to different options?
So my investment choice preference is small multifamily, fourplex, fiveplex type stuff because of the cash flow. If you have a vacancy, you can reasonably carry that property without too much financial trauma. But I'm always keeping an eye out on what's going on in the single family housing market as well. I believe that a good way to raise cash in the long term, so long term being 5 to 7 years, is to purchase a small single family townhouse, rent it out, and ride the equity appreciation up in 5 to 7 years. And when you sell that, then you could apply that to reinvestment into a small multifamily, or if you already own the small multifamily, you can use that capital gain to pay your taxes and then pay down debt on existing properties that you have. So a combination of both cash flow, fourplex type stuff, and then equity appreciation, single family stuff.
Cool. So being one of the earlier members of REIN, so I don't know when REIN came to Ontario. It sounds like it was in the early 2000s. Is that right?
It was. Yeah
2003. Okay, 2003.
Yeah.
So you must have seen a lot of people from that group that have done well in real estate. From what you've seen, what is it that most investors have done from that time that allowed them to be successful real estate investors?
They just allowed they had to allow this process of investing by step with the REIN mentioned economic fundamentals. They had to be open to adopting that philosophy and manner of investing into their own lives and stop trying to do things their way. At least that's the way it was for me. So I couldn't exert more of me on the problem. I had to find a new systematic approach to it. And that's what I found with REIN. And that's what I found with some of my fellow investors from back in the day in early 2000s had similar experiences. Mm-hmm. And once we adopted that, the REIN system and philosophy of investing, that's when things really improved. So I would have to say that having an open mind, cooperating with your fellow investors, and staying connected and associating with like-minded individuals is really the key to having success in this real estate investing thing.
Sure. So what I heard you say, one of the more important things that you found is just making sure that you're following the fundamentals that they teach in REIN, some of the fundamentals that you've already mentioned earlier here, and that kind of transformed things for you. So were you investing in cities that, for example, didn't have a lot of population growth or something like that in the past?
Well, so it's I think that I just got lucky being that I actually live in Orillia, and we were also invested in Barrie. So that was just sheer luck that we were in the right place at the right time, equipped with the right knowledge. I've invested in 6 condos down in Woodstock shortly after the opened Toyota, and we did well down there. We're out of there now. We bought them on the philosophy of the long-term capital gain. And then that first property in Angus, that was strictly a cash flow deal. So I knew that as long as it was rented, it would be a great property. But again, it needed so much renovations, and I didn't account for that. So I would say that was one of my learning properties. And I think Angus is doing really well, being just on the outskirts of Barrie. There's a big demand for new housing in that little town just northwest of Barrie. The only other place that I do still have properties is in Coldwater, Ontario, the village of Coldwater. It's only about 1,000 people, just about a 15-20 minute drive west of Orillia. I have a couple of small multifamily properties there we bought for an absolute excellent price. And I accept a risk premium for going to the outer markets. And I think that's what your listeners should do as well. If you're going to go to a market that's a little bit outside of the hot zone, then there should be a risk premium. And what I mean by a risk premium is the positive cash flow should be exceedingly better than anything else that you can find in hot zone.
Got it. Cool. Well, if you could go back to the beginning of your career as a real estate investor, what would you do differently?
Oh, geez, that's a good question. I think that I probably would have bought a couple of turnkey properties to begin with, not something that's run down or beat up. Just because I don't have a construction background, and I don't have that acumen to properly plan and strategize a big renovation like that. And I know that there's a ton of investors listening. Your listeners are probably just masters of this technique, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't resonate with me. So I probably would have bought more turnkey style properties. There's a developer in town that I bought a few fourplexes and fiveplexes off of, and we have a great business relationship. I know he's making a ton of money on his investment, but conversely, I believe that the buy and hold strategy is just as good. To hang in there, you're providing housing in the community. You maintain great relationships with your clients who are your tenants, and you can have just as great a return on your investment.
I just thought of a random question, but have you ever had the police called at one of your rental properties?
Oh, for sure I have.
Yeah.
Did I go each and every time? No, I didn't. I mean, most
But being a
most
police officer yourself, that's what makes me wonder.
yeah. So yeah, the policing thing, I sometimes I don't mention it when I'm leasing up an apartment, and sometimes I do. A lot of times, well, nowadays I'm pretty well known. Like it doesn't take a lot to be well known in Orillia, but I'm pretty well known up here. So a lot of the tenants that we attract now, just they don't want any BS, they don't want any drama, they just want peace and quiet, and a decent landlord that's going to look after their apartment if they can't, and that's what we provide. But I don't lean on my badge as far as dealing with tenant issues. I follow the law just like any other landlord would. But I also say that this business, 90% of it is screening good tenants to rent to in the first place, and you don't get into those situations.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
sometimes people are people, right? Not everybody has a great day, and sometimes we dip into those troughs where things are not going well, and sometimes there has to be an intervention by the police, and that's just the way it is in real life.
How have your tenants been with all like the COVID, with that kind of, with everything going on there? And I don't know if you've purchased any properties and inherited any tenants recently, but how's that been for you?
So we purchased this home during COVID. We sold our personal residence post-COVID. We purchased a duplex next to the property here, and I put my youngest daughter on title and mortgage there to give her a start in real estate investing. And I have just before COVID closed, I helped my son and his girlfriend refinance their property. They went through a period where they had to qualify. The real hard home trustee type financing was 6 3/4. I went on title and mortgage with them and helped them qualify 3.14 on a new first mortgage, and their living costs went to virtually nothing. Like their basement tenant and their roommate more than covers their mortgage payment, taxes, and insurance payment now. So during COVID, they both went on the CRB because they were both laid off, and they were skateboarding and working out and playing music and just having the life of Riley. So I kind of lost my train of thought again. What was the question?
The question is, how have your tenants been? Are some of them using COVID as an excuse not to pay rent, or are you finding that most have been good? And have you inherited any tenants recently that have caused any trouble for you?
So I'm happy to report that all my tenants are up to date, every single one of them. And I attribute that to being supported by the Real Estate Investment Network, staying plugged in with their energy and their suggestions. One of the suggestions was to put on paper all the resources that any tenant could ever want or need. And I did that. So locally, we have the Simcoe County Rent Bank. If you were in rent arrears and you were served an N4, you could apply to the Simcoe County Rent Bank and get at least 1 or 2 months of arrears paid. The CRB was a big help, and I sent my tenants a letter and explained to them that we're hoping that you follow the social distancing rules implemented by the government. Here are resources if you've lost your job and you're looking for financial assistance. And a lot of my tenants were very thankful that I did that, and I didn't have any delinquencies. I didn't have any missed rents during that period, and yeah, everybody reasonably behaved themselves as far as I know. It's been an all right time now. I'll contrast that with a little story here. I'm also recognized as kind of an authority for landlords in the Orillia area. So I was invited to a city council meeting on providing assistance to landlords, commercial and residential. And I was speaking, and I was reporting that I didn't have any delinquencies. I was reporting that I didn't have any issues. And some of the other landlords, like they lost 75% of their income. Commercial tenants that basically closed up shop. They had residential tenants that they were claiming were using COVID-19 layoffs as an excuse not to pay rent, and half their tenants didn't pay. They were getting into financial trouble, and I didn't have any trouble. So one of the counselors asked me, well, Mr. Mckenzie, what makes you so special? Why are you not having an issue? And these other landlords clearly are. And I said, well, I sent my letter to the tenant explaining all the resources that are available. And while I was saying that to the counselor, another landlord spoke up and interjected and said, a letter? I'd never send my tenants a letter. And I thought to myself, well, there's your answer, buddy. Like, that's why you're having trouble. You're not treating it like a business. You're not treating your tenants like customers. And that's how it's going to go for you.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Okay. That's good advice for people. And that letter is useful. We obviously, there were a lot of different people sharing their opinions on how to proceed with that. And I was more so asking that question because sometimes when you inherit a property, you don't really have a choice with regards to the tenant quality. So that's a different situation. But I'm glad to hear that you've had good tenants that have paid you and you haven't had issues during COVID.
Yeah, and we still follow the same screening process. Yeah. So I trust, but I verify every single thing on that application.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, you have to at this time. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Jules. I want to jump into the next section, which is the random 5.
Oh,
so I'm going to ask you. Yeah, I'm going to ask you 5 random questions, and you just tell me the first thing that comes to mind. Okay.
Okay, let's do it.
The first one is, what's your favorite thing to do outdoors?
Outdoors. I like walking my dog.
Okay.
Sorry, it's not more exciting than that.
Well, it's kind of a not very exciting question, so it's a good answer for that. All right. How do you get in the way of your own success?
I try to do things my way. So, forcing outcomes has got me into more trouble than I care to mention. So sometimes, I don't know, like in an acquisition, and as much as I preach or tell others that I don't get emotionally involved, I get emotionally involved.
Yeah.
And I found that when I start forcing outcomes because the bank won't give me the mortgage or the vendor won't provide this contingency, when I force things to go my way and they do, I end up paying for that in the form of negative cash flow or some aspect of the deal that is going to cost me thousands, and that could go on for a year or two. So
yeah,
I mostly am pretty good at trying to force outcomes, and I really got to pay attention to that and watch myself to not do that.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, number 3. What do you like to do that is traditionally considered feminine?
What do I like to do that's traditional? I like, I don't know. I like nice clothes,
Okay.
getting dressed up. I got my nice belt on, my good pants.
Okay.
I got a good pair of shoes on. I'm not flexible enough to show you my
Yeah,
shoes.
yeah, no worries. Cool.
Um, that's my answer.
That's a good answer. All right, number 4. What's the most relaxing situation you could imagine?
Oh, you had to go there, eh? So, it's usually around this time of year I start planning my Caribbean vacation. So I either go to the Bahamas or Jamaica or Mexico. And this year, well, I could, but I'd have to take twice the time off, and I'd have to
Yeah.
quarantine 14 days after when I get back. So this year I'm not going to go. The most relaxing thing is just curling up with a book, poolside on a nice cot, and just melting the sun away.
Nice. I like the way you paint that picture. Okay. And number 5, the final question. What success principle do you live by?
Have fun, make money, and make a difference.
Cool. That's great. I like that all your answers came so quickly. A lot of people have to think about them, but it's meant to be that way.
Yeah.
All right. So Jules, do you have any final messages?
Just keep treating your real estate like a business. Be cognizant of the fact that we're still within a pandemic. Wear your mask, keep your distance, but continue to provide your tenants, your customers with good service, and slip them an occasional note and let them know that there's resources out there if they find they're in some sort of financial trouble.
That's great. That's great. Okay. So how do people reach you, and what services do you provide?
So I'm on LinkedIn, very simply Jules Mckenzie, JULESMCKENZIE. I'm on Instagram with my name in reverse. So it's Mckenzie, MCKENZIE.Jules, JULES. And then on Twitter, I'm at Mr. Jules Mckenzie. And on Facebook, it's just my Facebook name, Jules Mckenzie.
Okay. I'll put that in the show notes so that people can tag along.
Appreciate that. And then what I had done previously, and I'm not doing it so much more now. Like I'm kind of taking my foot off the throttle as far as meeting investors and raising capital to buy more deals. I'm just kind of holding off on that for now. And that's mostly because we have this big renovation project going on with the Kavanaugh bed and breakfast. And I want to retrain myself. So I'm moving forward. When I retire from policing, I want to get my CCIM designation, which is a Certified Commercial Investment Member, which is a designation out of Chicago, Illinois. I want to learn about light industrial, commercial office, commercial multifamily, commercial retail, or any combination of those, and look to do bigger deals with an incorporated structure that investors could easily buy into and get out of. So for now, I'm just going to kind of take my foot off the pedal, re-educate myself, get into some books and get my CCM courses so that in a few years I'll be ready to get back into the market full swing, full time.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with that, Jules. Thank you for sharing everything you did today. And I will be sure to include all of your information in the show notes so that people can reach out to you. And good luck with your renovation.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, George. Thanks for having me. And thanks for reaching out to invite me on your podcast.
My pleasure. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks once again for listening to another episode of the Well Off Podcast. Just want to remind you that if you do appreciate the content, all I ask is that you comment, maybe like it if you can on the platform that you're listening to it on, and finally share it with friends and family. I'd love to get the message out there, and it would mean a lot if you can share it. And finally, I just wanted to offer you, as a valued listener, a free copy to the Roadmap to Real Estate Investing, which is a document that I've put together which helps you identify what strategy would best suit your needs at this current time. You go over certain things that are included in this document step by step, and it'll hopefully provide you with some clarity. So have a look. You can go to www.welloff.ca/guide to download your free copy.